Yes.
There it is. And also, because we've developed a PowerPoint that we hope you might find helpful, I'm going to add that to the chat right now, so everyone can just have it as well. We'll send it again and an email follow up once we're done, but if you want it now, you can have it from the chat. Okay, Spence, I think it's time to get the show on the road.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, welcome guys. My name is Spencer Willis, and I am an assistant professor in the Office of Instruction and Assessment. And I'm joined here by my dear colleague, Joel Morocco from the Norton School of Family Consumer Science and Human Development. Is it Family Consumer Science? Okay, perfect.
It's Family Consumer Sciences, and then I am in the Family Science Human Development program.
Very nice. And we're excited to welcome you to a conversation on incorporating career and professional development in the classroom. As part of my role here in OIA, I work with faculty members and other instructional team members to facilitate both courses and conversations on ideas that are student-centered and that would hopefully improve student learning outcomes and eventually prepare them to be more successful in life post their academic career. So a lot of the trainings that we facilitate are informed by both the faculty's experience as well as student experience and faculty members, including my own. And I came across this since my start in academia. I've encountered both undergraduates and graduate students who had trouble connecting maybe some of the didactic content from the courses to making more informed decisions about internships or careers and things of that nature. And I went to Google to see what was in the literature, and during my literature search, I came across a lot of best practices at other universities, including our own, which led me to Joel Morocco, and I reached out to him, and he has a tremendous expertise in career development and helping graduate students make more informed decisions about after their college career. So I reached out to him to get his ideas about it and to see if there was really a need, and if he'd be able to facilitate this conversation, and he graciously agreed to. So I'm happy that he's here, and I'll turn it over to him, and then we'll get started with our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Spencer. And thank you everyone for being here. So I am Joel Morocco, and at present, I am an assistant professor of practice in family science and human development. But as Spencer was alluding to, I do have years of experience supporting professional and career development with University of Arizona students in particular. So for over 2 years, I was a career educator in the Office of Student Engagement and Career Development, working with, any and all undergraduate students with any and all career challenges, concerns, questions, opportunities, helping them navigate and figure things out. And then after my 2-year stint there, I was in the graduate college for about a year and a half, working and supporting graduate level talent across campus, so master's, PhD, postdocs, with all things related to professional and career development. And so, when Spencer approached me to have this conversation, we had a good conversation. Our emphasis is at the undergrad level, but I think there's a lot of interesting things that might also translate for those individuals who are supporting graduate students. And if nothing else, hopefully at the end of the presentation, there are some useful resources that are available to all of us on campus that maybe you were unaware of or just hadn't really seen or thought about very much. My hope is that there's something helpful for each of us to take away, although I know that some of us are in this space a lot more than others. And that's okay too, which actually is a really nice segue to this first slide here, which is just to say that as we have this conversation, I want to acknowledge for each of us that this is a spectrum that we're talking about here. So when we think about each of our individual roles and responsibilities across campus, right, and our comfort level with this type of content and our ability to kind of enact and put some of the things into practice, we're all over the place, and that's okay, right? I'm just really happy that we're here having conversations around these topics to support students, and that don't feel like, when you come away from today's conversation, like, oh, you should be doing X, Y, and Z, right? There's this continuum, and as long as you're starting to think about these things and maybe taking some steps to support your students professionally and in their future careers, I count that as a win. But for some of us, maybe we're much further along and we're doing a lot already. And I still hope that there's something useful that you maybe can take and implement or, enhance what you're currently doing. But I just wanted to kind of give everyone that primer that, don't stress if you're like, oh my goodness, there's a lot, because there is a lot, or there can be a lot, but you don't have to do all of it by any means. Okay, Spencer, ready for the first question for the group?
I am ready.
Okay.
All right, guys. So now we're going to have a conversation and get your insight, and we'll start with our first question. What are some assumptions we have to combat in order to infuse career and professional development in the classroom? So if you're able to, you can unmute yourself and feel free to chime in. But we're curious to hear what are some of the assumptions we have to combat in order to infuse career and professional development in the classroom.
And answers coming in on the chat already too. I love it, Kaylee, that we know the careers that our students are interested in. And then Brooke says that it conflicts with curriculum or course schedules.
Very good.
I think one of the biggest ones that I experienced was that the students know how to do that already, that they know how to navigate those things. And that's not always the case, because like if you're talking about professional communications, they assume it's the same across the board. It's not. So taking that assumption away, I think, is a good one.
Yes, so it's interesting. Right? So the emphasis on students already know, right, either what they want to do or how to at least figure out what they want to do and then make that happen for themselves is something that, is often assumed by, different stakeholders across campus. And then interestingly, right, with the kind of the juxtaposition there of that we know, right, from the faculty and staff side too, like we know what those careers should be that our students are interested in. And that also, there's a lot of variability around there too, because you can be majoring in anything, but go in a number of different disciplines or a number of different career trajectories potentially. I mean, of course, there are those more professional oriented programs where if you're going to become an engineer, right, we're looking at a very specific career, academic career trajectory to do that. But for a lot of other, disciplines across campus, there's a lot more variability about what the graduates can be doing once they finish their degree based on their interests and their passions and the skills that they've really harnessed or honed while they were in their programs. Brooke, I'm interested. Could you say a little bit more about that it conflicts with curriculum or course scheduling in particular? What maybe like was coming to mind when you were thinking about that?
The test, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, I've in my own degree program, in an attempt to maybe personalize an assignment or make the learning more tailored to maybe the work I was participating in or my personal interests, that it conflicted with the goals of assignments. Like, no, this is focused on the curriculum of this course, or no, there's not that much flexibility to incorporate your interests. So it was really curriculum centered. I don't know if that's the right term, versus student centered, which I thought was combative to incorporating these ideas.
Oh, that's such an interesting point, right? And we'll talk about the way in which, as kind of something we can think about doing is adapting, right? Different types of assignments, but the ones that lend themselves to it, right? So it kind of goes back to that spectrum idea that not everything is going to lend itself to doing this type of work very easily. And so if there's assignments where it doesn't make sense, we might not do it, but then also, right, maybe the culture of the department or the kind of what they're most emphasizing for the student outcome. If it's really, really specifically, associated with an assignment, maybe there isn't that wiggle room that we would want. And so there are other things that we can try to do to, insert career and professional development in the class structure without it necessarily being an assignment, even though I think many of us, who are teaching would recognize that when it can be connected to an assignment, they're really more likely to engage with it and maybe get some higher level outcomes from it. So that's really interesting. Let's see in the chat, that they are experiencing career mentoring somewhere else in curriculum from advisors. Aaron, yeah, I think it's an assumption that a lot of people make, right? So I don't have to do it, someone else is doing it for sure. It's happening on campus, they're getting it somewhere. Then Stephanie's finger, so to add to Aaron's, yes, and I would say that many assume that students are already accessing SCCD resources if that's of interest to them. That's such a good point. So I think one of the things that I don't think that everyone is aware, right, of student engagement and career development as much as they are pushing and trying to be out there and trying to be, you know, forward facing and engaging. It's also the name, you know, it's career services, right? I mean, they don't want you to call them that, but I think it's really helpful if you're like, okay, if I don't know that they exist and I'm looking for them, I'm probably going to look for career services, right? That is student engagement and career development. SCCD is the office. Brooke says the culture, great word for it. Yeah. Depending on who your faculty are, right? Depending on kind of their pedagogical approaches, the things that they're really prioritizing with their students, right? It can make it challenging to start doing some of this work in our classes in particular. Kaylee says there also seems to be some disconnect regarding who is in charge of career conversations. There's a bit of not it happening lately. Yeah, I think we're juggling a lot more and more as time goes on, each of us in our respective roles. And so it's like one more thing to add, right? The not it totally makes sense. That's where that spectrum idea comes back. Like you don't have to do it all. You don't have to know it all. But I think, you know, just kind of being aware and informed is helpful. And it's definitely another assumption that we have to be subject matter experts about career opportunities if we bring up career related topics in our classroom. And Aaron is seconding that. Yeah, I think that is another, I think that's a big assumption a lot of people make, which is why they don't even want to start down the path of what could we be doing? What could this look like? Because it's going to prompt more questions, right, in my students that I don't have the answers to, and I don't necessarily feel able to help them navigate, right? Because, you know, I think one of the things that is maybe tricky or a barrier for people moving in this direction to support students in this way is that they might not really even know what their process and experience was. Maybe it was clunky, maybe it was very streamlined, right? But not thinking about the way in which they would support, you know, many different diverse students with many different diverse career ideas can be really stressful. And so if nothing else from today's talk, I hope you don't feel like you have to have all of the answers, because none of us do. But that's part of conversations that students can have with, you know, professional career advisors about how to, you know, wayfind, right? You have these questions, how do we just find the people out in industries who can actually give you really solid, concrete answers and advice and be models that you might want to follow for yourself. But really great conversation. Some of the things that Spencer and I were thinking about, you've hit on many of them. So that first one, students already know what they want to do. We know that that's not true. Or sometimes students have a really clear idea of what they want to do, and then life happens, right? And they're like, oh, I thought I was going to go become a medical doctor, or I was going to go become an engineer, or I was going to do this. And then I'm not doing that well academically, or I have other priorities now, or something really major in my life happened and I really just want to switch gears and I want to go in this direction now instead, right? But they don't know what that means or what that could look like. So think about just the number of students. I didn't pull the statistic, but the number of students who switch majors over the course of their time in undergraduate, right? Like they're switching majors, they're figuring things out. You know, sometimes the careers that they're thinking about might still work, not major discipline specific or dependent. Sometimes they're making drastic changes where they're going to have to think these things through more, and maybe they haven't. Students will receive this information at some point from someone. That's that not it, right? That's that someone else is going to do it. I don't have to worry about it. I wish I could say that is that's a guarantee. It's not, and I think that everyone in this chat, I suspect, is thinking about these things and is more aware of that. So maybe these are conversations to have with colleagues about, hey, people aren't necessarily having these conversations with students. People aren't mentioning these topics with students. Maybe we should think about ways that we can start to do that to support them. But that assumption that it's happening for them at some point from someone might not. My content area doesn't lend itself to talking about career and professional development topics. So this is a little different in terms of what, was it Brooke that had said it? It was Brooke, yeah, that it conflicts with curriculum, right? This is more not so much like the faculty or the staff that are teaching a course, but it's more about just my topic area. I'm teaching math. I don't see how it lends itself to career and professional development, because I just need to learn math topics and concepts to be able to do math. I'm bastardizing math, of course, but just to kind of, think about what some faculty, staff's perspectives around these topics might be. It's like, well, we don't do that because that's not, our discipline doesn't really focus on that. So what would that even look like? And we'll talk about ways in which, trying to be creative to infuse career, but also in ways that just, when we think about students as adults who are engaging with us, there are ways that we can start to highlight for them, right? Just their role as a student is helping them develop in professional ways, and if we identify that for them, we can draw that directional arrow, and they can think, oh yeah, no, you're right, you're helping me, develop my communication skills, right? My written communication skills when I'm writing emails, when I'm, writing a paper, for example. And then I don't know enough to be helpful, which came up, right? The assumption there that like we need to be subject matter experts now because we've broached the subject, and students are we might open floodgates inadvertently, and then students have lots of questions and concerns, and oh my goodness, what do we do? We'll talk about resources, where to go on campus. As Stephanie has already identified, SECD is your friend. They have professional staff members there to support all students at any level. So, you can point them there. I know that Sean Nordell is here too, and she is the new, it's the assistant professor of practice, correct, Sean? With the career focus, the career counseling focus in the graduate college too. So if you have graduate students, right, there are resources on campus to support students. Okay.
All right.
So I think, okay, Spencer, please.
Okay, so what are we doing, or what have we tried in the classroom to incorporate career and professional development? And I guess I can share a little bit about mine before we open it up to the floor. I know in my early academic career teaching undergrad, I taught a program planning course and a program planning and evaluation course for health promotion majors. And a lot of my efforts to try to incorporate career professional development was to work with other community agencies within our local community, sort of creating experiential learning opportunities. And although I wasn't as explicit as I would have liked to have been back then, I would have liked to have that opportunity or create that experience so that students could get a chance to work with community agencies, and hopefully get a sense of I could replicate this in another sector if I would like to, that's more in tune with my interests. Those are some of the things, in addition to guest speakers and things of that nature. But yeah, I would love to hear from you guys.
So I see Kaylee in the chat. She says, we have a career course that we offer and that all students can enroll, even freshmen. But then she says, but we are finding we need to follow this up at the junior level, because they forget, right? I think that the timing of this is also really interesting to think about, right? When we do it too early, they'll go through the motions, but not really connect and think through like how this is helpful. And then if we do it too late, they're in panic mode and they're like, oh, I got to figure all this out really quick and make things happen. So trying to find that sweet spot can be a challenge. And then she says, we also have several courses that require experiential learning, which is awesome. That is, that was a focus of the university. It's still a focus of the university. So I'm really happy to hear that. And then Charlotte says, presenting the Arizona, is it digitization? I'm sorry. And teaching the e-portfolios to students on how to connect it to a resume. Yes, so those tangible things that they're going to create, right? And then that they will have as artifacts of their time here can be really helpful. But, not just assuming that they'll understand that those are things that, future employers might value, or that those are things that they might want to show employers, right? But telling them concretely, like, hey, this is really impressive that you did this, right? And I think the university is moving more and more in that direction in different ways, right? With the experiential learning, with e-portfolios, with signature assignments for gen ed. So I think we're really starting to think about the way in which we help students recognize that what they're doing can be examples of their skills and abilities that they can share out. And then Alejandro says, something that I plan to use next semester is time tracking. So for engineers, as in many other domains, it is very important to control the time you invest in different tasks. I plan to ask students to keep track of the time they spend in different tasks in the course, assignments, office hours, lectures, readings. They should use this in different ways. So one, to keep track that they invest no more than the allocated time in the course. So 3 credit hour course hours implies 6 to 9 hours of study at home. 2, judge what tasks provide more return. And 3, assess what they are doing to support their own learning.
Very good.
Alejandro, I love that. Could you say a little bit more about where that idea came from? No pressure.
Yeah, no. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm new to Arizona. I just joined this fall. And before joining academia, I was in industry. And I still do consulting. And this is one of the key aspects that most technological organizations are concerned about, that engineers use way more time than they should. That they are usually crazy about this last bit of performance, but they do not control resources that well. So yeah, it's something really, really important for them, but we don't teach them, right? We simply say, this is the exam, find the electromagnetic field in this point, and we don't control how much time they invest or anything like that. And I think that's, it comes from kindergarten, I think, all the way after college. Mm-hmm. So the inspiration really comes from there, right? It's a way of learning that you have the time you have, and you need to know what you're doing.
I love it. And I think so. It's the time management, it's the prioritization, right? And even if they don't want to go into engineering, those are 2 skills that are highly valued by employers across all different industries, right? That they want to, that you can be efficient, you can be effective, that you're reflective in your work processes, and you try to improve as you go. And so having your students do that type of project assignment for the semester is going to be hugely beneficial to them in terms of talk about those things.
And that's, the professional task. So that's my main line of inspiration. But the second one, after I've been a few years in academia, is really for the students to be self-conscious about the effort they put in the class and the grade they are getting. Most people invest less time than they think they invest. So I've had several situations for students saying, I'm putting a lot of effort in this class, and they have never showed 2 office hours, right? Mm-hmm. So this is also a way to help them be self-conscious of, well, maybe I'm spending not enough time, or I'm spending too much time. And now I have evidence to really shape what I'm doing and understand what I'm getting out of the class, right? So those are the two main sources of inspiration. The most important one for me really is the professional development, but also as an instructor, having evidence about what they're doing in class, I find it very useful.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that a lot. Thank you for sharing. Let me see, so Stephanie says, in my gen ed course, I describe what transferable skills are in general, and then I'm explicit about the transferable skills that students are gaining from course activities. Yes. I also include reflection questions and assignments such as this one. How did the project and your experience with the multi-stage planning prior to execution connect to your ideas about future possible career success? Stephanie, I love it. I love it. I know that you're in particular, you're primed to be thinking about career. Can you talk a little bit about kind of, where that came from and how that's been working for you?
Yeah, so I teach career readiness courses in the College of Humanities, but I also teach gen ed courses, and I just find that students really need to be told explicitly that they're gaining skills and need help identifying some of those skills. And so the more I can provide rationales for what assignments I'm providing helps them also have more enthusiasm for the assignments that they're doing, by saying, this isn't just an assignment for this class, but this is actually giving you project management skills and giving you, creativity skills and critical reasoning skills. And then they're more likely to see the value themselves for the activity, and also understand that the general education course benefits them beyond just checking a box and meeting a requirement that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the emphasis on, like, we just need to be really explicit. I think we create these experiences for our students, like, yeah, this is so relevant. And like, how can they not see how this is relevant and connects to many different things? But they're not sometimes, right? They're checking boxes and moving through the motion. So we can really tell them, like, hey, this is why this is helpful and important. And even if the assignment itself isn't specifically focused on career and professional development, it's like you're doing the things that are the skills that you need, no matter where you're trying to go next. And for you with the gen ed course in particular, right, like they're coming from all different majors, all different walks of life, all different thoughts about what they're trying to do and where they're trying to go. And it's still this applicable experience for them that's going to help them long term, which is phenomenal. So thank you for sharing that. Aaron says, we've tried to do this across our certificate curriculum, but in a concerted way in our capstone courses. Shout out to Phyllis for introducing e-portfolios in our curriculum, which we've heard from many students have been very helpful on the job market to share with prospective employers. Aaron, do you want to say anything about the e-portfolios and moving in that direction?
I might actually just defer to Phyllis because Phyllis is the expert on this. So we have a graduate certificate program, and we basically spend the entire semester of the capstone course helping students build and workshop those e-portfolios. It's one of the core parts of the curriculum, and we just did an alumni survey just this last summer, and one of the top things that our alumni reported as being really helpful in the program is the construction of the e-portfolio.
Yeah.
A very high percentage reported how useful that was on the job market.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I love that, and I love that you're doing it at the graduate level. I know the university, right, is moving to an e-portfolio type model. And Phyllis, I'm not overly familiar with your role. I'm not sure if it's at the undergrad level with the e-portfolios, if you wanted to add anything. Okay, well, no pressure there. And I know that that's something that is also being implemented at the undergrad level. In particular, this emphasis on e-portfolios is part of, the gen ed refresh and other things that are happening at the undergrad level with signature assignments and things like that. So I think that, it has been seen, it is acknowledged across the board that we need to be helping students identify, the tangible artifacts of their learning, the things that they're producing, and how then they could package them to highlight their skills and experiences in meaningful ways to employers. So that's great. Let's see, Brooke says we currently focus a lot on providing feedback on professional communication. That has been a huge need in the students we work with, emails mostly, but also how they ask questions, seek feedback, respectfully disagree, and argue. Yeah, Brooke, I think that's a big thing that we can start to try to highlight in any discipline, is that communication skill set in particular. And every year or so, the National Association of Colleges and Employers will ask employers, what are the skills that you most look for in new hires? And it's an emphasis on undergrads in particular. And, every year consistently, the first 8, 9, 10 skills are these transferable, these essential skills, right? It's communication, it's critical thinking, it's problem solving. And then you get to skill, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there, then the technical skills start to make an appearance that are very discipline specific, right? But that emphasis on, no matter who the student is and where they're trying to go, helping them recognize that they're building a communication skill, and they're doing it in different ways can be really helpful. Kaylee says, yes, Stephanie, I'm working everything back to our accreditation standards to help them understand the why behind it. And she had to jet, no worries. Alejandro said the other thing that I have consistently incorporated into teaching is failure. Engineering is this relentless journey of failure after failure until eventually something works out. How do we not let students, however, we do not let students to fail. So my assignments are prepared so that students cannot find a correct answer, but improve on it continuously. I love that. I haven't looked at it in a hot minute, but I do have a failure resume as an exercise that I did for myself, where I then showed students, these are the publications that never happened. Here are the tenure track jobs I didn't get interviews for, right? Here is the grant that I submitted that didn't get funded, because they only ever see the things that are successful, right? They don't necessarily see all the work that goes in behind it. So that was an exercise that I did that I found helpful, that, you could also have students do, or you could share yourself. Sean, collaboration, training skills, and intersectional communication skills, and being explicit and transparent on the purpose of the skills. And then there's a nice resource highlighted there. So thank you, Sean, for sharing that. Stephanie, I do something similar as Alejandro. I'm talking about dealing with disappointment. Students love hearing about my experiences with disappointments. And we also talk strategies about how to manage those experiences that are part of life. And then Joel loved the idea about a failure resume. We'll totally make you like, yes, right? Because again, it's kind of like social media, right? We're only broadcasting the good things. It's kind of, anyone who's on LinkedIn a lot too. Actually, I shouldn't say that. On LinkedIn, there's a lot more now identifying and kind of sharing of, hey, I applied to this many jobs and didn't get interviews, or hey, I've been doing this and hasn't been working. But for a long time, LinkedIn was very much like, Instagram and Facebook. It's all the pretty shiny, like, hey, here's my new job, here's my promotion, here's my whatever. So really highlighting for students that this is a process, right? That you don't have to have all the answers, and that you're not going to always succeed, but like you need to be trying and moving forward. Great. Okay, so I wanted to, for the sake of time, we've talked about a lot of these, right? So I want to just kind of synthesize some of the ones that Spencer and I had discussed prior. So adapting assignments. So assignments that might promote exploration or reflection of different careers or interests or values, or, just ideas about how you want to spend their time, right? Going forward in life can be really helpful for students. Assignments that require skill and experience identification, right? So thinking about what are the specific skills, maybe that's part of an add-on to an assignment, right? You've done this very aligned to our curriculum and our learning objectives assignment, but what were the skills that you had to use, right, to do it successfully? Can you kind of tell me what they were and kind of how how they helped you complete this assignment? And assignments that encourage connection building. So I really love, I think it kind of goes back to that. We need to be SMEs, right? Subject matter experts, SMEs, SMEs. We need to be SMEs about career if we're going to bring it up, and we don't. And so if we have assignments that lend themselves to say, hey, go find someone who does this, right? And have a conversation. But by virtue of that, you're also building a connection and hopefully a relationship with that person. And maybe they can be someone that can help guide or support, the student in their thoughts, their ideas, and their development. Bringing in guest speakers and panels, I think, is really, really helpful, and I think can really take off some of that stress and pressure to have all the answers. Especially think about, if there's traditional faculty, right, who went undergrad, grad, and then became faculty members. They, might not have a lot of exposure to other industries or other types of, hiring processes, and so, bringing in guest speakers who regularly, recruit your student population, or that your students might have an interest in working with, or alum of your program to come back and share, can be really, really helpful and powerful. Can help highlight diversity of possible careers. So thinking about signature assignments. So I know that there is this emphasis on signature assignments at the gen ed level in particular as we move forward, but there's no reason why we can't take that same perspective of the different types of semester-long projects that we might have our students working on in any of our classes, and really thinking about, with that lens and light of what are they producing, right? And what skills is it highlighting, and how do we help them understand that and package that in a way that will be, of interest to employers. And I have some examples of each of these that we can look at very quickly here. And then just, that spectrum, right? You don't have to do anything major or big. It's enough, and it can be very helpful just to promote career resources in class, right? If there's a student in your class who didn't know, as a first gen student, I didn't know that there was a career center on campus until someone told me, right? I wasn't going to go look for it on my own. And so, there are students like that in your classes who don't know what resources are available until someone is like, hey, this exists, go check it out, right? Or just know it exists so that when the time comes, you can go check it out. So creating space, on your D2L site, maybe in a classroom space when you're meeting, whatever that needs to look like, or you'd like that to look like, you can do. Stephanie says, if you don't have time in your course schedule for guest speakers, having students pursue informational interviews as part of an assignment is a decent alternative. Yes, I love that. And again, you don't have to be a SME, because there's lots of really great information and resources about informational interviewing that already exists out there in the world too. So if you're like, what exactly does that look like, and how do I help students navigate that? There are already playbooks built out for that. There are already, step-by-step guides on like how you might do that research, how you might make that initial contact, how you might want those conversations to happen. Stephanie, have you used informational interviews in an assignment before?
Yes, and students often feel intimidated at first. So I give a brief overview of what it is. Sometimes I even have students practice, if there's enough class time, with a classmate, just so that they understand, that it's essentially a conversation. But students get a lot out of informational interviews, and even interviewing parents or loved ones about their journey can often help students understand just what, the diversity of careers, and the fact that a winding journey is a very typical journey for people out of school.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love kind of the different levels of it too, because I think one of the things that can be really challenging is, we're talking about failure previously, there's a lot of, I don't want to say outward rejection, but you might try to do an informational interview with people and they don't respond to you, right? So you're making the asks out there and no one's responding. And so that is a form of rejection. It's not overt, right? I'm not saying no, leave me alone, but you're not getting a response. And so there's that rejection still built into the experience. So helping to build up their confidence and their competency around doing this type of work by having conversations with their peers or talking to loved ones first, right? Who will be really open and be like, yeah, of course I'll have this conversation, and we can talk about really interesting things. Like, once you've done it, right, you're feeling more confident, you're feeling more competent, you can then go and try to do it with professionals or different people in different sectors. I love it. It's great. So I just wanted to show an example of a creative way that a lot of these come from my own life. I apologize here. I was able to infuse career and professional development into my research methods course, my undergraduate research methods course, which might not seem like it lends itself really well to doing career and professional development, but we're learning about quantitative designs, right? They're learning about survey questionnaires and cross-sectional studies and what that looks like. And I want them to kind of engage with those types of, survey questionnaires, cross-sectional design for that lesson. And I'm thinking, well, where do I find surveys? What kind of surveys can I just have them do easily? And I'm like, there are a number of really cool career-oriented surveys that they can do that then built in can have both this, curriculum aligned, like, hey, analyze this measure. Was it valid? Does it seem reliable to you? But then also, like, were the results surprising to you, right? Did you find something interesting or informative about yourself, or was it confirmatory more than anything, right? And what this assignment it allowed for a lot of really interesting discussion for each student in terms of like, I'm evaluating from a curriculum aligned perspective, but I'm also really evaluating from, is this true of me? And did this tell me something that was helpful or informative? Which I know was one of the strategies that we've been talking about here, right? Is building in to our assignments, right? These different kind of connections to professional and career development. So, you know, I know for a fact that a lot of the students did not really like the Enneagram personality test, and I probably won't be keeping it for future iterations of the course. But a lot of them, you know, and some of them were like, you know, this wasn't, once they got past one, they're like, well, this is kind of, you know, more of the same. Like, well, yeah, but from a research methods perspective, it's good to have multiple measures of the same type of construct to make sure that you're really assessing what you think you're assessing. But then also from the career perspective, right, this is helpful because it's really confirming the things that, you know, you're learning about yourself as being true. Like, you know, you really do care about this type of working environment, or, you know, utilizing these types of skills, or these types of careers might be really good for you. So just an example of a way in which you can adapt an assignment. When it comes to panels, so LinkedIn should pay me for as much as I promote LinkedIn at this point in my career, but I would really encourage everyone, if you're not on LinkedIn, to get on LinkedIn, because, you know, it's hard to follow students. Anyone who's trying to do alumni data collection can know what the struggles and the challenges of knowing where your students are and getting them to respond and provide feedback. But if you just, by virtue of being who you are and building relationships with students while they're here, if we can get them on LinkedIn, we can connect with them, we can then follow them, we can see where they're at long term. And so then when it comes to like, let's put a panel on, it doesn't have to be the people that just graduated, right? It can be the people who have been out a few years. So 3 of the 4 of these individuals were from when I was a graduate student, you know, 2012, 2013. So they have had, you know, almost a decade of a career now. And it's really interesting to see the different positions that they're in, right? They all have bachelor's degrees in family studies and human development. But Ebby here is a senior business analyst at Wegmans Foods Markets, right? And then Alicia here is working for Deloitte, which is really cool. But these aren't things that I would have assumed for my students necessarily, that I would have thought that they would be going in those directions. Kyle went on and got a master's degree and is now a licensed master social worker up in the Phoenix area. And then Raquel here is at Mint House. I don't even know what Mint House is, right? But if you are building these relationships with students anyway, if you can be in this space, or if some of your colleagues can be in this space, like you don't have to be in this space yourself, but if we know that there are people in our department who are connecting with students and then you stay connected to them, it makes it a much easier way to say like, hey, let's have a panel. Let's just reach out to the people that we're connected with on a site like LinkedIn, but also great data when people are like, what do I do, right? I think we get even ourselves, we kind of limited with our discipline and go, what do you do? Just go find our alum and see like, where are they at and what are they doing in different ways. Aaron says, LinkedIn was a super helpful tool for finding our alum. Yes, they might be really excited and happy to be here, and then they go, and then it's hard to get them to respond. So something just quick note about the signature assignments. So this is for the Gen Ed Refresh in particular. So signature assignments are at the heart of learning and provide students with an opportunity to demonstrate and experiment with meaning making. These assignments represent the core components of the course and allow instructors to connect learning opportunities with course goals and outcomes. So when I used to teach adolescent development at a different university, they had a program paper, and I would put in the syllabus these career connections, right? So I would tell them, we were talking about the way in which we want to like hit our students over the head with like, you are developing these skills, or this is a really helpful thing. Like you might want to save this to share with employers. Just language like, if you're happy with your program paper, you may consider uploading it as an example of your work on your LinkedIn profile. So we weren't doing e-portfolios. Now we might say, add it to your e-portfolio if we're moving in that direction. But then kind of fully explaining to you, if you don't have a LinkedIn, I just linked to a checklist. It's like, hey, I wasn't a SME at this time. This is before I was in career services here at the U of A, but I was like, I know this is important and I want you to be thinking about this. So, here are some links that might help you start to do that work. To just kind of get them thinking in that way, and then they can do with that information what they will. Another example that we've kind of talked about here is another career connection that I have put into my syllabus, is that, communication is a key skill you'll want to develop and continue to refine. Every email you send to a professor or colleague, supervisor should be written in a professional manner. That means it should include. So trying to help them recognize the importance of their email etiquette, right? But also kind of acknowledging too, that like, this is a really important thing for you career-wise going forward. And then I, at some point, had examples, but that link went dead. I don't teach that class anymore, so that link can stay dead. Promoting resources in the classroom. So having a dedicated space on D2L, right? Even if you don't necessarily acknowledge it much, just students will see it and they're like, oh, you know, we do all these other resources that we'll put on our D2L sites for tech support, for CAPS, for other things. Like just create a career, you know, a career space in the same way, and just, you know, link information, link them to SCCD, link them to the career, the Wildcat Career Guide, things that they can then very easily access should they want to. If it's just always kind of available and they know they can go into a class and find it, when the time comes, that kind of on-demand model, like, oh, this really cool internship popped up and I want to apply to it. I don't have a resume, but oh, I know that, you know, in Dr. Willis's class, there's a space on the D2L site that has the career guide. I'm just gonna go grab it real fast, right? They don't even necessarily need to know that it's housed in SCCD or anything more than that. It's just like, I can get that because that is what I know. Sharing events. So, you know, SCCD does a lot throughout the year, and you know, they share out a lot through their website and through Handshake. And so just kind of, not that you have that spectrum again, you don't have to be on these sites and going regularly, but just even knowing where to go to look for these things can be helpful. I know I'm going a little fast here, just want to keep an eye on time, and because I think I'm hopeful that I'll get all this up here for you. Three resources I wanted to mention to everybody. So we've been talking a lot about SCCD, student engagement and career development. I want to actually, pull up their page so people who maybe haven't been on their website or seen it lately can get an idea of what it looks like and what it does. So it's career.arizona.edu. It's how you get to student engagement and career development. And there are a few things I think are really helpful. So right here at the top, the Connect to Life Lab and get resume feedback. So your students can go to Life Lab. It's the, you know, on-demand help with your career, no matter your starting point. They have a physical presence on campus. They're on the second floor, which is like the main ground floor of the student union. They have office hours every day of the week, 12 to 5. You can send a student. So if you're having a conversation with a student or someone is expressing concern, you don't have to have the answers. You just need to know Life Lab is a place that exists on campus. It's at the student union. They can go and have these conversations. So they can drop in. They can do virtual options as well. So they can email, they can do a Zoom meeting, they can chat, whatever their comfort level is. But they help with everything. So from those initial conversations all the way through, I'm negotiating an offer and I'm not sure how to do that. Can I please get some support? And every step in between, right? So how do I figure out what I want to do? How do I find those jobs? How do I create my materials? How do I answer interview questions? All of it. And then a really easy thing too for students is the get resume feedback option up here. They created a Dropbox now, so students can submit documents for review. So again, if you're, you know, working with students, maybe they're junior, senior level, and you're like, oh, it'd be really great if you could have them start to develop some of these application materials, you know, they can come here and get professional feedback on their materials. The other thing to identify for everybody is that at the top right, doesn't matter what page we're on, the faculty and staff option up here, I think can be really helpful for people. So you can request more information, but you can do a consultation. You can learn about engaged learning experiences. You can, you know, build and expand different research type experiences. They'll more than happy to show you how to use Handshake if you're interested. But the invite us to your class or event, I think is, you know, might be really helpful for people. And again, maybe you want to do something, you're not sure what it is, and you're not going to be a SME, you know, a subject matter expert in the area, but like you want a career competition to happen. Inviting SCCD into your space can be really helpful and a good way to do that. Any questions about SCCD before I do a crash course in Handshake? Stephanie says, for interested in further discussions, SCD programs for faculty and staff. Yes, career. Thank you, Stephanie. I was looking for, I couldn't find the space, and I was navigating the website earlier, and I was like, I know it exists. I have done it. I have the placard on my door. Yeah, Mary Frances Cooper does that. It is, I think, insanely helpful. It's a series of 3 workshops that you'll go through. I think the first 2 are an hour each, and the third one is an hour and a half. And it will, you'll gain awareness, comfort using SCCD's current resources, best practices and coaching. So I think part of that too, right? That fear of broaching the subject is not so much that even you're not a SME, but like you just don't even know how to have the kind of conversation that might be helpful for students. And create plans, integrate career development conversations. Yeah. And she's great. Highly recommend. Yes, Brooke, I'm glad that that's helpful. 2 other sites real fast, keeping an eye on time. I wanted to show, is it Handshake? So it's arizona.joinhandshake.com. Everyone with a U of A NetID and password can, I believe, log into Handshake. You can all log into Handshake. You don't need to be a student. It's a single sign-on. I know I need to update my password. Keep dragging that out. And this is the student side. I think it can be really helpful to see, like, what are our students seeing when they're coming to Handshake? And one of the things that, not that you have to be an expert on Handshake at all, because I'm not anymore, because it has had many refreshes in the past 2 years. But, the more a student uses it and the more the student tells it information, the more helpful Handshake will be. So, there are right away, it's like, hey, steps to success. It will point them to events that are happening on campus, and it will also help them create and keep updated their profile. So as they're changing their major, as maybe their interests change, as they develop new skills, they can kind of keep coming back to this space and doing it. So it's like a LinkedIn, if you're familiar with LinkedIn, but specifically for college students in particular, and employers that are actively recruiting college students in particular. So it's a great place, in addition to LinkedIn, for our students to be. The event section in particular, I think, can be really helpful. Again, SCCD in particular does a lot of, they have quite a large staff over there working on professional development and career things. And so, checking out what's going on. But what's also really nice about Handshake, though, is that it's not just SCD specific, right? So if there's something happening on campus that maybe the CALS Career Center is putting on or Eller is doing, right? You might be able to see that here as well. If it's open to all students, then students could attend. So there's Handshake, and that's where, when you have students who are junior, senior, thinking about jobs, I would encourage them to first start looking at Handshake. Employers are vetted, right? So unlike LinkedIn, where there could be predatory employers and opportunities we don't always know, Handshake, every employer, every job is vetted. It is a legit, responsible employer with a real opportunity for a person. So if there's if that's helpful to know that there's some safeguards and checks in there as well. And then the last resource, very quickly, I wanted to show people, what's it, ArizonaBigInterview.com. I always forget if it's Arizona dot or dot Arizona. But Arizona.biginterview.com is another platform that we all have access to with the UA NetID and password. It is a single sign-on. They worked very hard to get that single sign-on for everybody. So what it is an online practice interview platform. So you can send your students here and have them practice their interview skills. And it actually does a lot more than that. So it has resume curriculum, negotiation curriculum, but its emphasis, thus the name Big Interview, was and is on interview practice and preparation in particular. What's really nice about it is that under the practice, they can go directly to the interview practice section, and it's going to say, okay, how do you want to practice interviewing? What does this look like for you, right? Do they have an idea of a specific industry that they're interested in? Are there certain competencies or skills that they possess that they would feel comfortable answering questions about? Different populations, are they applying for grad school? Are they thinking about government jobs? Are they a veteran, right? So there's different ways that they can kind of engage with this content to get that exposure and experience. And then the questions, will range in the number of questions, and if they're easy to hard, and they can record themselves answering those questions. And if nothing else, they have those recordings. They can share out those recordings if you would like, to get feedback or have them be evaluated. The only other thing I wanted to say about this, and I know we're very short on time, is that I don't think what people realize is you can build out your own mock interview for your students. You have to get admin access to the site, so you'll have to work with student engagement and career development for this in particular, but you can create your own assignment, and within the assignment, you can create your own questions. Under custom questions, you can add a custom question, and then you can record yourself asking a question, or you can record your colleagues asking. So if there are specific skills or competencies that you think, or that your students are developing, you could create an interview, a mock interview that your students take that are going to ask them about their specific experiences in your courses or in your major. I'm spending like 30 seconds showing it, so I apologize, but I just want you to know that this is an option that exists for those who may be on that spectrum, want to invest more time and energy into doing something a little bit more tailored to their student population. Okay. And then I just wanted to throw out that there are a lot of great resources across campus that help with all things career. And beyond SCCD, CALS has their own career center, Eller has their own career center, the Graduate Center has career resources and a career advisor, and the Alumni Association has the Alumni Career Lab too. So no matter what stage a student may be in, there is going to be resources and supports on campus. It's just about identifying them and pointing them in that direction. Oh yes, we have a UA subscription now to JobScan. I don't think I knew that, Stephanie. That's really cool. So Stephanie just put in the chat JobScan, and it's a tool. I'm just going to read what you wrote. It's great. A tool that gives job seekers an instant analysis of how well their resume is tailored for a particular job and how it can be even better optimized for applicant tracking systems. So with the UA referral, students get 10 free resume scans. So basically they have their resume, they have this job that they're interested in, they submit both of those things, and it says, hey, like, you're doing a decent job, or like, hey, you're missing out on opportunity here because they're looking for this, this, and this, and those aren't in your resume. Can you include them? That's good to know. Okay, I know we have like a minute left. Concluding thoughts, concerns, questions. I doubt I've covered everything, but there was a lot. So I'm sure everyone will go back and they'll reflect and they'll think, and then they might have questions. I'm very happy to answer questions after the fact. So you have my email. If I said something, it piqued your interest or was confusing, you want more insight, happy to have conversations. Just reach out to me and we'll continue the conversation, okay? Spencer.
Awesome. Yeah, this was a great conversation. I'm so happy that we had it, and I learned a lot, especially from our colleagues in the chat. This was very great. I guess the next steps. Do you want to talk about the career exploration assessments, or we maybe can include that when we will share the PowerPoint slide along with the recording for those who couldn't attend, or for those who want to take a look at it later on. And then we'll also share in an evaluation. So we look forward to hearing your feedback from us. But yeah, I think that's it for now. So we're at the 11 o'clock hour, and we're going to stop recording now. But yeah, thank you guys for coming and sharing such insightful information. This was very good.
Thanks, everybody.